Hi there, and welcome to the first ever Bitcoin Takeover Q&A. I am Vlad, and I have decided, since I work so much on articles and I post so much about Bitcoin on Twitter, to also give a chance to this video way of presenting information. And I'm not sure if I have the skills polished yet, and I'm not sure if it will be as efficient as Twitter is, but I can envision that there is an audience on YouTube that needs this kind of information. And I know that crypto YouTube is a cesspool of shitcoinery and bad information and disinformation and just ruthless altcoin shilling. So I want to just promote some ideas about Bitcoin and explain why it's good, why it works, and at the same time also answer to some questions that I receive on Twitter or maybe in the comment section of these videos. So before I begin with the questions that I have received for this week, I just want to let you know that I have published an article this week and I'm kind of proud of it. It's called Bitcoin is not slow, it's secure. And it explains why it makes sense to make Bitcoin transactions and why some expectations about Bitcoin being like the Visa network and MasterCard and PayPal and Venmo are just unrealistic. You cannot expect a decentralized network which has to check all the time that the transactions are not double spent and also has to check if there is no inflation bug. There is no central trust, there is no node that counts much more than the other. So there needs to be this consensus of all nodes to agree that the transactions are legit and everything that's happening in the Bitcoin network is correct and it's following the longest chain. So all of this process takes time. So having a block released every 10 minutes is actually a brilliant design. Some people refer to it as a Model T, say it's obsolete because it was released in 2009 and at the time the internet connections were slower. But you have to take into consideration that a global network of nodes that validate transactions and issue new blocks cannot simply rely on the assumption that everyone has broadband speed for the internet. And you have miners who operate in the middle of the desert, maybe that they want to go to Antarctica, and they're going to have very hard conditions and they don't have the proper infrastructure. So in order for them to be able to be in sync with the rest of the network, there needs to be a reasonable amount of time. And that's one of the arguments that I'm making. And I also compared the security of Bitcoin with other altcoins and shitcoins because they say, for example, Ethereum, they say that they have better scalability and that they're faster because they release a block every 15 seconds. But in reality, it doesn't really allow all nodes to validate every transaction. And as a matter of fact, it's provably less decentralized than Bitcoin. If you want to run a full Ethereum node, then it's going to take you a lot of resources, both in computation and storage. So with Bitcoin, you just have to synchronize 1 megabyte approximately every 10 minutes. So if you're somewhere in the middle of the woods and have the worst connection ever, you can still run a node. And to me and to a lot of security experts, that's real decentralization. So if you get the chance, you should read my article because I think it has some good points which prove that it's a better idea to transact with Bitcoin and it's a better coin than the altcoins. And also make a point that the number of confirmations for a Bitcoin transaction to become final is 6. And even after one transaction, you need to spend about 25 Coinbases to be sure that you can attack the network and double spend that one transaction to revert it. So the incentives are not there. And when you transact with Bitcoin and you get at least one validation, one confirmation on the network, you know that the transaction is final. And with other altcoins, it can take up to 1 day to reach the same amount of security that you get in 60 minutes with Bitcoin. So that's something that you have to take into consideration, and you need to understand how decentralized networks work, because it's simple to think and compare with Visa, but that relies on a trusted setup, and you have trusted actors, and you have an institutional system that relies on trust. One bank is going to trust the other one that it's honest, and if they make any mistakes, they can just revert the transaction, freeze the funds, appeal to the government, and do all that sort of stuff. Whereas in Bitcoin, once you have sent one transaction and you have received one confirmation from the network, it's kind of final. There's nothing you can do to it. So, in order to make sure that you have the proper setup and it's properly decentralized, you need a reasonable amount of time. So if 10 minutes until the next block is slow to you, then I have no idea what to say, because what you want to use instead of Bitcoin is not as secure. So take that into consideration. Check out my article. And also, as a second argument of this presentation, of this video, I just want to let you know that I will be trying to branch out to Vimeo as a video platform where I post the videos. And I have had bad experiences just watching people have their accounts banned on YouTube. And I've seen Tone Vase get banned, I've seen BTC sessions, and I honestly don't want to be in their position. I don't want to have to appeal to YouTube to unban my account, to go through this process. I would rather just hedge against the censorship of YouTube. So if they have a problem with Bitcoin content, then I'm going to just post on another platform simultaneously to make sure that I have proper backups and the work that I do is online. And in the long term, if I can afford it, I will try to also branch out and create my own server and host the videos from there, or possibly join a network, because Tone Vase also said that he wants to create his own servers. So if he wants to expand and do that sort of stuff, and I can pay him a monthly fee or something, I think it's more economical to just do that as opposed to buying equipment for myself. Now, let me get to the part for which you have come, possibly, and it's about the questions that I received from you. And the first one is from Roxana Nasoy, who's also a Romanian, and I have met her at a conference last year in Cluj, in Romania. And she said, I'll be first. And since the one is asking you how much planning and time you put per episode with the podcast, well, that's a good question, because I don't put too much planning usually. I just know what I want to structure. So, for example, season 4 of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, the one with this logo that you can find on iTunes, Spotify, and also YouTube, and soon enough it will be on Vimeo, has started from this idea that I want to interview people from all the important hardware wallet manufacturers. And it turned out to be a success. But in the beginning, I just had like a wish list of people that I wanted to interview. In the end, I suppose it turned out to be a lot better than expected. But I didn't put too much planning into it, because the more I planned, the less it turned out the way I wanted it to. And what I tried was to email every guest that I ideally wanted to have, and I ended up having actually better guests, because I had Slush from Slush Pool and Trezor and Satoshi Labs, and I also had Nicholas Baca, BTC Chip, who is the inventor of the ledger, and I also had Peter Todd, which was unexpected because he doesn't really do podcasts and he's very private about his affairs. I also had Lazy Ninja, and that was a very nice surprise and addition that I have made along the way. And for the Keep Key, I got to interview their COO. So that was also a very nice surprise. And also seeing Rodolfo Novak, who possibly doesn't like me, join just for the sake of presenting the cold cards perspective on the hardware wallet design and market. Well, that was also a nice surprise. So in this particular example, I think I didn't put too much planning into it, but I definitely had to send out a lot of emails and do a lot of back and forth communication. Whereas in the first 3 seasons, it was kind of more spontaneous. It was about, are you free to do a podcast this week? And they would say yes. And for that, I feel grateful because people in this space are a lot more open than you expect them to be. And even when they have hundreds of thousands of followers, they're still nice. And they still want to present their views. They want to explain how Bitcoin works. And they are very honest advocates. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the critical thinking that goes on in the Bitcoin community. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still here. So moving on to another question, Victor Irem or Erem, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, wants to know, assuming that BTC becomes the world reserve currency and scaling issues are solved, so no one can buy that proverbial coffee. So one can buy that proverbial coffee, sorry. You envision BTC will exist alongside fiat currencies and other cryptocurrencies, or will Bitcoin be the only currency used? And that's a very good question because depending on your vision and understanding of money and economics, you can either argue that money converges towards a monopoly, like it was in the case of gold, or you can look at governments and argue that they will not renounce the power that they have and they will still want to mint their own currency. And I have studies and my background is in political science, and knowing governments and how they operate and how they have spent so much time establishing central banks and trying to gain the trust of their citizens and minting their own currency, I think currencies and national currencies were an essential part of nation state building. So just because they have moved on from gold to the US dollar as a reserve, and then some European countries decided to go to euro, and some Asian countries went to the yuan of the Chinese, doesn't mean that if they change the reserve currency, they will also give up on minting their own fiat. It is possible at some point that governments will issue some sort of national currency that is run as a sidechain of Bitcoin. And they have, for example, one BTC that gets denominated into a national currency and has small fractions. Actually, I'm not sure if one BTC is enough because you'd basically have only 100 million Satoshis. Let's say, I don't know, maybe 100 BTC. So you'd have 10 billion Satoshis. That's a much more reasonable amount for a nation. And I guess through the Lightning Network, you can also do transactions that are smaller than one Satoshi. So that remains to be seen. But I can envision that governments will issue their own currency as a Bitcoin sidechain or second layer, or they can just keep on going with their national currency, but back it with reserves that are based in Bitcoin, just because possibly in the future it turns out to be much more stable than the US dollar and then the euro and the yuan and the rubles and everything else. So I don't think that Bitcoin is going to be the only currency, but it might be the most efficient of reserve currencies and the best store of value there is. And just like, for example, in the times of the Roman Empire, you had gold coins and silver coins, and you wanted to spend your silvers first and keep your gold for as long as possible because in time the gold coins ended up being much more valuable in the amount of silver coins that you could get with them. So from this point of view, yes, I think there will be multiple currencies. I'm not sure about cryptocurrencies, and I can understand that some of them might serve different purposes and have different designs, and possibly there will not be interest for a side chain to be added for everything. So I possibly there will be like two or three of them that maybe do some sort of, I don't know, possibly advanced privacy, because unless that's going to come to Bitcoin, but that's kind of difficult because, as proven along the years, Bitcoins are not really fungible, and you can trace one amount of Bitcoin that was issued to a certain block when it was issued. So you're not going to have equal amounts. A Bitcoin from 2011 is not quite the same as a Bitcoin from 2000 and 2020, you know? So Bitcoin minted 2 days ago has a cryptographic proof that it was minted in that block, whereas a Bitcoin that was minted in 2010 has another cryptographic proof. And you can agree economically that they have the same value, but you can also discriminate between them. And I suppose that sometimes Chainalysis and companies that analyze coins and trace them back to their origin can say that something which was issued in 2010 can be tainted by the Silk Road, while some Bitcoins that were issued the last year or yesterday are cleaner and are less likely to be associated with some sort of criminal activity. So fungibility is hard. So I can envision that a fully fungible and private cryptocurrency is going to exist alongside Bitcoin. I'm not sure if it's going to be one of the existing ones. Right now, the only contenders are Monero and Grin, in my opinion. I think Zcash is bound to fail. It has developed the ZK Snarks protocol. It's very advanced and nice, but the fact that it's privacy by choice, so you opt in for private transaction, has flawed the anonymity set because not many users transact with privacy. So yeah, I think Monero and Grin are cypherpunk and nice and are going to be around for a longer time, though there can still be room for improvement with some sort of ZK Snarks coin or sidechain and stuff. I believe there will be sidechains and there will be tokens issued on sidechains, and you can already see that Liquid is issuing security tokens and stuff like that. And there's going to be a layer 3 of Bitcoin called Spectrum that's going to do RGB and colored coins. So yeah, there's room for a lot more than just BTC. And it's not just I who argues for it, there's a lot of development in this regard. And the last question is, I have heard several people suggest it could exist alongside BTC pegged fiat currencies. I just don't understand this argument. Once BTC is easy to use and everyone gets why it is the best money, who will want to hold fiat even if it's pegged to BTC? Why not hold the real thing? That's a good question, but it's going to be hard to teach every person on the planet to use something like BTC properly. It's not hard, I'm not arguing that it is, and definitely there's a lot of improvement to be made in the UX department to make it easier and more intuitive. But at the same time, I don't know. Some people will prefer to trade physically with paper money and stuff like that. And if it's backed by BTC, then that's nice. You can go and exchange it to any exchange or bank and get the proper amount in your Bitcoin wallet, which is nice. Or you can have people trade open dimes, bearer asset devices that are small and physical, and there is no on-chain transaction. So that can be an extra privacy-friendly way of transacting. I can think of lots of ways and lots of reasons why you should trade physically. And I think even now, you might have really good privacy coins and you might have BTC, which does a great job at securing your transaction. But I think paying in cash is still the best option that you have for privacy because it leaves no traces and you just have a final instant settlement. The person agrees that the money has value, they take it, and you take the product or the service, and that's it. It's final, it's settled. There isn't much that you can do to revert it. Whereas paying with credit card, you can do chargebacks, you can have cancellations, you can have your account frozen. There is so much wrong stuff that can happen in the meantime. And I have arguments that you should trade physically and you should meet in person and offer something in exchange for something else that's tangible. So possibly there will be not fiat, but there will be some sort of currency that's pegged to an amount of BTC, and it might just look like today's open dimes, or they might go the way of skeuomorphisms. So they might replicate the shape and the size and the colors of today's paper money or credit cards, just to allow citizens to better understand what they're using. Because let's assume that hyperbitcoinization comes in 20 years, you still don't have the proper computer science literacy to allow anyone to secure their own coins, be their own bank, run a full node, and stuff like that. So you don't want to expose them to custodial services. So it's possibly better to use bearer asset items like open dimes. So that's my answer. I hope you're happy with it, Victor, because you gave me quite a challenge there. I had to think about it for a while. And I think this concludes this first episode. I'm happy that you have listened up to this point. And leave your questions in the comments. And if you like this little project of mine, feel free to send a donation because I don't have any sponsors. I would love to put logos all around here to brag about being sponsored, but there is no sponsor to speak of. It's kind of rough nowadays to find anyone who wants to invest in content. And the state of the media is not really good during this phase of the market. And it's also hard to find a job, which is one of the reasons why I'm trying to go independent as opposed to using my college degree to find some sort of job at the government. So I will give this a shot. I will do it more often, possibly weekly, possibly on Saturdays. I don't know. I haven't settled yet, but keep the questions coming. Subscribe, share this, read the articles, learn more about Bitcoin because you have no idea in which ways it can help you. I'm not saying that it will succeed as a project and fulfill all the ambitions that we have right now, because that's a big statement. But at the same time, it's useful to learn about how money works. And it's a good idea to study for yourself and think outside this fiat box that has been put in front of you. So once you step outside the fiat cave and you understand the history of money and how it's supposed to work and what good money is, there's no turning back. You're opening a brand new dimension inside your brain, and you'll be readier than ever to embrace full sovereignty and understand why it's important to take care of your own goods and valuable items. So, yeah, read articles, learn much more about this, and I'll keep the videos coming. Thanks for watching.